Hi, welcome to class. We're the only two right now, but the other ones will show up eventually, right? I hate my life. I hate my life. A Professor Sunreis Productions!
Hello class, Professor Sunreis here. So after recording the whole video, I'll have to do it again, but finally today I will showcase you guys my Horus, resonator, Bystial, whatever you want to call it. I personally call it Bystial Horus Synchro because we're playing way more tuners than just the resonator package. Overall, it has been a blast testing this deck. I had many different iterations of it. I mean, I was testing Bystial Synchro like a few months ago, even before Horus cards were ever announced, and it wasn't really working. But now I think we got to a critical mass of things in the extra deck, things to play in the main deck, where the deck actually works pretty well, and it might actually be the best Dragon Link adjacent version of Bystials. Of course, there's Runic Bystials, with this deck plays very similar to it, just doesn't have all of the restrictions the Bystial have, like the Runics have, but it does play very similar to that. And without further ado, don't forget to pass on the subscribe button, leave some feedback down below, and let's get right into the profile. So this is the list I'm running, and playstyle wise you will have to imagine this between a link between Dragon Link and Runic Bystial. It does have a very similar endboard of trying to go for Seal. Like if everything goes right, we have Seal, IP, Baron plus a Dissipator in grave and a Baldrake or a Drewsworm in hand. So we have that, but we have just way more follow-up where it becomes akin to Runic, where our whole game plan just becomes try to survive and not die and then just overwhelm the opponent in the next turn. But contrary to Runic, we actually have a battle phase, and as you can see here, we play 9 non-engine and 43, and I was actually having a list with 41 non-engine. 41 cards in 9 non-engine, so we have that. But similar to Runic, for example, we also use most of our cards for the combo, so we don't really want to draw too much non-engine. Like 2 is all we really ever want to draw. So I think ratio-wise, this deck is looking very good, and let's just get into the card by card. For the Bystial stuff, I mean, standard 3 Rebellion, 3 Serenade, they are just the most important ones. 2 Drewsworm, because I want to play a somewhat high Bystial count to have level 6 extenders all the time. They also double as non-engine. They're still decent against a lot of decks, especially all of the Diabellstars in graveyards. We can just banish that out, so we always have at least one Bystial alive going second, which is very helpful. 1 Magnamut, of course, and then lastly a Baldrake, because the deck struggled a little bit with the disruption. Seal, IP, Baron, and the Dissipator isn't the greatest board. Give me a double board breaker on that, and we are struggling a little bit with disruption. And then the Baldrake just really helps to always survive, because then, yeah, they go battle phase and they make an SP and they do a little stuff here and there, but more importantly, we survive, and we just have so much follow-up in there. It is enough. You don't use it all too often, but it still comes up just as the level 6 extender, so I think it's very fine for the spot. 1 regain only. I thought about playing 2 with the Horus Mills, but ultimately I don't think I would play it. I would much rather play a Branded Beast, but at that point I don't really want to add the brick, so I will be staying it like that. Then for the tuner package, 3 Resonator and 1 Crimson Gaia. It's tough to say which is the best one, but it has so many great things going for it. It's one of the tuners which can just go for 2 tuners, right? Because you can normal summon it and trigger it, and then you can special summon it. So that's very cool, especially because we only play 3 other normal summons. It's a good discard, it's a good mill, you just like to see it. 3 Assault Synchron, it's a little better because it combos with everything. So also with the Safers, and it's like the extension it can give with the graveyard effect, where face-up Synchro monster gets distributed or banished, comes up a lot, especially with SPs. People banishing our Dissipator with SP effect Assault Synchron, just get it back. It feels so good. It's a neck breaker at this point, probably. So really good card as well. And like I said, the extension it gives with the Scar Red is insane, opening up the Coach King lines. I will showcase you guys later. Really good. And then 3 Ready Fusion. This was the latest edition, and I was playing at 41, like I said, but I was lacking a little bit on like this last card, this last engine, this last extender, which I really wanted, and I think Ready Fusion is just that. The extra deck space does hurt a little bit, not gonna lie. There are lots of things which you could play here: Striker Dragon, a second SP, a Typhoon, a Zeus even, an Access Code. All of those things you could put in there, but they all aren't that crazy. And Ready Fusion is just the perfect card, being able to flex between level 6 Darks for Scarlet or of the other Synchro 8, and by extension the Synchro 10 lines, or having a level 2 tuner is really crucial. Everything about this card is perfect, apart from it being a spell and not a monster. If this was a monster, it would be so much better, just because we could at least summon it off a Horus card, like of the Zombie Vampire Mill, but we cannot do that. And yeah, the extra deck slots is a little... it would be better if it hasn't that restriction, but other than that, this card is insane. and it helped the deck so much, especially making early barons and combos can be very, very helpful depending on the matchup. Hand traps aren't that popular, and we are playing talent, so I kind of want my opponent to hand trap me a little bit, because it just makes the end board so much better if we play our combo out normally and don't go for like a very early baron, because it's kind of resource intensive, but having the option to do so and playing between like playing against hand traps or just playing normal combo with this card feels very, very good to me, and I really, really like it. Then for the Horus cards, 3 Imseti, 1 Happy, and 3 King Sarcophagus. These usually come out going second, like 2 of them, because they're just not as great going second, but going first, these cards are insane. I was playing a Duamatev, so the third Horus cards, just didn't really play it. We will talk about other extra options which I had in mind or I was testing and still try to test later. But yeah, the Horus cards are just insane. They're the best play starter the deck has. Resolving a zombie vampire gives the deck so much gas, especially because we play the Sacred package with 3 Sacred, 1 Chaos Base, and Weather Burst Cool Up Certain. The deck doesn't really run a normal summon apart from Vision Resonator, and yeah, Vision Resonator can be a decent normal summon, but you definitely can play more. And with Sacred, you have the perfect mix between a normal summon, a good mill, a discard. You have the Dragon Engine alive, so Seal has another target to summon, and the baby dragons really help with making Seal or Coral Dragon to synchro climb into a Dissipator or a Baron to get going like into all of the direction which you want to have. So that's really, really good. Well, normal summon is not that impactful, especially because I cut out the Striker Dragon, so we cannot even do anything by 1 card with this, but because the deck plays inherently into 2 to 3 card combos, I figured, okay, fuck Striker Dragon. I rarely went to it anyways unless I got like heavily hand trapped. I would much rather go for coherent 2 to 3 card combo lines and then save the extra deck space for stuff like Ready Fusion, for example. But other than that, this card is also insane, and because the Bellion is such a great tool for not only comboing, but also the card advantage and the grind game, especially together with Soul Synchro, the combos, if you have Lubellion alive, are just so much better than if you don't have Lubellion. I think playing the Sacred and giving us more access into the Bystial / Lubellion package is very, very important. And then for non-engine, like I said, this deck plays similar to Runic Bystial, where we don't really want to run a lot of non-engine, and we could definitely get away by cutting the Fenris and playing a clean 40, and this might be something which I would try to do. But if you want to play 9 non-engine, we have to make sure that our non-engine is actually kind of synergistic with our engine as well. And with 3 talents, it's really, really good going second already. It's like probably the best card going second right now. And then going first, the only thing which you're really, really scared of is either a shit ton of hand traps or just an Ash on awkward hands like on Imseti, where it's our only play. And the talent just gives us that additional extender going first. And yeah, if we go completely uncontested going first, this is, in my opinion, a deck which just auto wins if you play it out correctly. And there are very, very few combination of cards which actually can break our board and then win, because you basically have to OT Chaos or get rid of all of our follow-up, which is super, super hard to do. Zeus is one of the few things there, but because it's so obvious and the options the opponent has to break this board are so far and few between, you can definitely very, very, very heavily play around them or into them depending on what you want to do. 3 Imperm, I was playing Droplets. Imperm just felt better because we didn't really have a lot of Droplet sense. Wasn't playing Ready Fusion at that point, might be a Droplet again. Just the most high impactful / generic card, like the perfect X thing between them, like the highest impact but also the most generic, and Imperm and Droplet are probably that. What I also really, really like about these is that if we draw them going first, they are very, very good disruption that we don't really have already, because like I said, we enter on Seal, IP, Baron, Dissipator. Having a targeted negate, especially which plays around talents, is very, 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 very good. So that is also like a huge plus. It almost feels like a high impact card going first, especially in game 1. Having the full combo plus Imperm, you just win the game. And then 3 Fenrir, it's really, really good going second. It's a good mill of Zombie Vampire. Hitting this if in awkward game states or if you already have everything is very, very good. And more importantly, it's a free discard for the King Sarcophagus, so that way we get the value of both our non-engine in the form of Fenrir on the board and the extra value for our engine in the form of the discard. Felt really, really good. It's a little awkward, so like I said, I could see myself just cutting this or like maybe cutting the Imperm and playing a clean 40, but the consistency feels very, very good so far, and mathematically playing 40 between 43, the difference isn't that great. The side deck, I'm still tinkering a lot with. I like the Jerusalem, I like this against Rescue Aids, I like Droll right now, I like DD Crow because it flexes into Fire King, into Purely, into so many different decks. Ashes against Lab, and then 3 Anti-Spell because I was struggling, like I said, which was the biggest problem I had. Like, I go first, I get my combo through, I just get OTK'd. And Anti-Spell, I think, stopped that completely. If I don't have to play around a talent, there's no way I'm losing, because stuff like IP plus Drew's Worm just punishes so hard, and the opponent always has to use 2 bodies to push into something, and then we can use one of our disruption to get rid of both of those bodies, and they just cannot keep up if they don't have cards like Talons, Storm, Feather Duster as equalizers. So it really, really helps. Decks can play around it. Every deck runs SP, and so they can just do that. People can chain the Diabelsa engine, so that they just chain Wanted, and the complete Diabelsa engine works under this. But in my opinion, if we have a board with it, it doesn't really matter, and it's the best way to support a board. Fire King decks can play around Skill Drain. Our end board has very, very low attack points, so Skill Drain doesn't really synergize with that. And a lot of the other floodgates really don't make sense, apart from maybe Summon Limit, but I'm not a huge fan of Summon Limit, and it's arguably worse if we get bricked. Anti-Spell can still definitely be a turn stop for the opponent. And Summon Limit, it is too awkward. Yeah, maybe Summon Limit would be better, but just some sort of floodgate, depending on the format, I think in this side deck slot is very, very good. What else I thought about playing was a Thrust package, but I just don't know if the targets are good enough, but we will see once we actually go to tournaments. For the extra deck, Coral Dragon, very, very, very important for Synchro climbing. You go through this a lot. It helps to get value out of the small Chaos Dragons to still get into your big Synchro monsters later on in the combo, and the draw, it feels good. And this card, pop 1 card the opponent controls, always nice to have when breaking boards, feels good. Excel Synchro, insane. Sadly, there's no space for the other starters to trigger the Assault Synchro. I don't think the lines even work that way because we try to go for the Scar Rat. Speaking of the Scar Rat, it is insane what this card does. Usually, at minimum, it gives us a Zombie Vampire if we don't have the Horus cards. If we have the Horus cards and we go into the Assault Synchro cards, this gives us the Coach King, which is insane. Another reason why I don't think a third Horus is needed, because we have this. The Coach King line is super, super susceptible to hand traps, so we only want to go there the most efficient way possible. And the most efficient way possible is with 2 cards. So it's Lubellion / Sarania plus an Assault Synchro. This gives us a Coach King plus a Regained. And we really, really only want to go into that with that. We don't really want to use an additional discard and then get imperm on that and just cry ourselves to sleep. So we only really want to go into the Coach King with those 2, and those 2 make it, like this one especially, make it so, so easy to get into there. Also with Crimson Gaia, playing this, Crimson Gaia actually becomes like a soft regain, because every time we pop something, we get one of those 2 back, and we can really, really start to get some nice value off that. We can also use it to extend / put different bodies onto the board. If we make a Baron, we can pop one of our XZs and get one of those 2 guys out. So we either have an 8 for another Synchro play, or we just want a generic Dragon for a seal. So that really, really helps as well. Makes Crimson Gaia, like I said, kind of like a soft regain, which feels really, really, really good. The other effects don't really come up too often. When you attack with one of them, you can change all monsters your opponents control to face down defense position. This can be very, very helpful in certain scenarios. It's always nice to have that utility, right? And the effect that where we can wipe the opponent's attack position monsters definitely can come up as well. You should definitely remember that. Hasn't come up for me yet, I believe, but we just have to think about that. Then for Synchro 10's Dissipator, it's really, really good because we use 1 tuner to go into this, and then we can we banish the other tuner off with a Bystial or like one of the Chaos Dragons, and then we can summon it off Dissipator, so 1 tuner can turn into 2 tuners with Dissipator, making Dissipator Baron, and then we just link it off into a Seal to play around the Dark Ruler and also just get the most amount of disruption out of us. Baron, insane. You could play 2, but what I instead play is a Changing. Changing is such a great card. It really, really helps in the Fire King matchup. Going second, you much rather always make this over Baron. And one other problem I had is that I was running out of Synchros, because it's not unlikely that we run through all of those things in the extra deck turn 1, and then we are left with like a Changing, SP, Dark, and maybe like a Coach King and one of those 2 in the extra deck. And we just want to have the most impactful card in the extra deck, especially because we have Crimson Gaia for a guaranteed tuner play next turn. Especially if we resolve Magnamud and we have Lubellion Grave, we have a Synchro 10 always, no matter what, basically. So having the best in there was Changing, while it's also very, very good at breaking boards, being a solid disruption if we somehow still didn't OTK. It feels like the best slot, and it has been performing super well. For Lynx, Seal, super easy disruption. It deals with monsters, it deals with perma spells. We're really decent against Fire King. You just like to see it, and it gives us follow-up. We could play more into the Dragon package, but all of the other cards which we would add would be bricks, but we can definitely float into a few nice things with this. IP insane card. We want to end on this going to SP. I mean, we don't have to talk about it. I would like to play second. Only thing which I could be cutting is a Dark, but I still think Dark is too good into awkward game states. Going second, especially if you want to get rid of stuff into the graveyard. For example, you want to link off a Seyfert. It's very, very important. Dark can then also summon an IP from the opponent or an SP from the opponent. We can crash it to search a tuner. So I think it's still too good not to play, even though we don't really use anything to link climb with. Zombie Vampire Coach King for combos, basically standard, and then Sandwich and Elevate for the Ready Fusion. You definitely use Elevate more, but the Sandwich definitely comes up clutch if we want to go for an early Baron. So depending on the format, you could get away with not running the Sandwich, because at worst, Ready Fusion then can be used as an extender for the IP. But then it would be a little more bricky, and this way we get the most like value out of the Ready Fusion. Playing 3 off in the main deck in 43 while playing 2 in the extra deck can be a little iffy, but because we draw so deep into our deck, like with Chaos Base, Imseti, Coach King, Coral Dragon, Regain, we draw, it's not unrealistic that we draw 5 cards in our turn. So drawing a Ready Fusion in there is very, very likely, especially with all of the deck thinning we do. So we get value out of this a lot of times. So the extra deck slots don't feel too wasted. For extra options with things I'm thinking about, like Crimson Gaia, playing a second copy of that feels good, because then we get more fluent value out of this. It's not too bad to draw this, especially if we float into another one and have a free discard for the Horus cards, but it does play into draw a little more, so I figured I don't do this. Levy, interesting. If we never draw this, this is insane, because Seyfert has so many options of getting a Levy. Like, we can send a Scar Red, we can send the other card of that, we can send a Lubellion on the board and just search a Levy and make our end board a little stronger. Our graveyard is filled with Darks anyway, so it will always be alive if we get to it. It can be searched by Dark. It's the best Magnamod follow-up we could ask for, but it is an additional brick, which I am trying to minimize, so maybe I will be adding this card back, but for now, I just want to minimize the bricks, and if we get away with playing without the brick and without the power Levy adds, if the power is enough, why would we add the brick? So we will have to see if we add this card. Duamatef on a similar note, it's another brick. It comes up a little bit here and there, but it only really comes up if we have full combo, or if we draw this plus King Sarcophagus. And because post side, I would always cut out the 2 King Sarcophagus, and then by default I'll have to cut this one out as well. It would only be something which is therefore going first, and we are already good enough in my opinion at going first, where I just don't think this is needed. Ringer Worm was insane when I wasn't playing Ready Fusion, but with Ready Fusion now, I don't think we need additional tuner access. Yeah, it can be nice to have tuner access searched by Magnamod, but because we have so much follow-up already, I just don't think it's needed. It was only really good if we milled it off Zombie Vampire, because then we get a level 2, and if we have the Bystials, then we get 2 level 2s of that, so it felt really broken at that. But at 1 it was too inconsistent in my opinion, and the slot I would want Ringer Worm to fit would be the like search target for Magnamod for more follow-up, and I think Levy would just be a little better than, yeah, it's harder, it's like worse to draw, but overall I think Levy would be the card for that. I'm also thinking of playing the Centurion package, especially with the new Synchro 12. Centurion package could be something to look into with this deck. Probably would have to play a slightly bigger Centurion package and then cut the Ready Fusion, especially because we also need the extra deck space, but definitely something to keep in mind. With more good Synchro 12s, it can be decent to play this. Then Droplet, like I said, I was playing it. It's still a very good card. You definitely should keep it in mind. We could also be playing a Scarlight in the extra deck to have a time win condition and just have a good board breaker into boards. I don't know if this is needed because Coach King is already a time win condition, but Scarlight is just way easier to make, of course. So we could maybe do this if we have like a 14 card side deck and we don't know what else to play. I would probably put in the Scarlight for that. For the extra deck cards options, definitely SP felt very good, and a second SP came up a lot in early testing. The better I got with it, it came up less and less, but still definitely, in my opinion, if I had a 16th card, I would probably play a second SP. Chaos Angel, also an interesting card. It's just a very good Synchro 10, probably the 4th best after all of the other, like Chenging, etc. We can make this with Seyfert and a Bystial as well. I don't think the tower option of this card would be coming up for me, but it's a big beat stick. It opens up games very easily because we can just banish one and then just run, like, have probably 7k just by this and the other Synchro 10 we have. So that would be good. Appaloosa would be a decent addition if we play the Army Rush. Army Rush I'm not playing because I'm always trying to end on Seal, but normal summoning Vision Resonator linking into Army Rush can unbrick a few hands. At least that's what I thought, because when I wasn't playing Army Rush, I always had those hands, but the moment I started playing Army Rush, I never had a hand where I needed it, so I think we should just cut it, especially with Ready Fusion. We have another way to unbreak our hands, because Ready Fusion unbreaks all of our tuners, and then we go into the first Synchro, be it the Scarlet or whatever, and then afterwards everything in our hand is alive anyway, so I just don't think the Army Rush is needed, and by extension the Appaloosa probably doesn't come up. Maybe there would be decks where the Appaloosa would be in FTK again, but I think Seal is just slightly better, but we could definitely go for like an Appaloosa based board as well, and just go for Appaloosa Baron or something. Unicorn access code, don't think we really need them. I started playing them in the beginning, cut the Unicorn very fast, and the access code was just there for the Dark, but I don't think we really need to play them, especially because I'm thinking about cutting the Dark, so I don't really know. And then we have a Striker Dragon. I said it earlier, I think this deck, we don't really want to go for 1-card combos, and realistically we will always be using 2 to 3 cards, sometimes even 4 or a whole hand, and then the Striker Dragon just will never come up. Like normal summoning Sacred and having nothing else, I am fine with it just being a brick compared to a Seal Pass. I'm not even playing enough non-engine to make Seal Pass work, so in my opinion, I think it's okay to lose a few games because we cannot make that Seal of Sacred alone. And then lastly, Typhoon, or even Zeus I guess we could be playing, but Typhoon never really comes up, and Zeus could come up in theory, but for that we would have to use the Horus engine as the last push, and I don't really like to do that because this plays the most into draw. Yeah, you can argue that going second you don't really have the luxury of playing around the roll, but other than that, I just don't see myself making Zeus all too often. We could argue to play a Typhoon, but I am playing the Ready Fusion package and there's sadly just no space for the Typhoon. This is where I wanted to actually do a few combos in this video, but because I already saw that the video was way too long, it's like 20 minutes, I think adding like another 10 to 15 minute combo part would be too much. Instead, I will be doing that tomorrow in a separate video. So for now, this video is over. Hope you guys enjoyed this quick sneak peek into my new baby of a deck, and I hope you guys are as excited as me of showcasing you guys all of the cute tips and tricks we can do with this deck. So there will be a combo video coming, and then a shit ton of gameplay so that you can see what this deck is doing. So without further ado, class is dismissed. You guys are free to leave. Professor Sunreis out. Peace.